guys have been blowing up my social media, DMs, comments, inboxes, you name it. You've been in there asking me when this thing's going off-road, what else needs doing, and what the hell I've been doing with all my time. In this video, we're going to talk about what I've been doing, what the next steps are for this thing, and when you can see me living a bashing off-road. Roll the intro. Now, we've spent months of this year in this exact car park right here. It's Kinsela's Kustoms, the men and women responsible for the bar work, the suspension, the diffs, and a whole lot of insane fabrication work that happened on this car. Now, whilst this car looks finished, it is so far from that. The last 10%, as you know, with any project, is the biggest, most time-consuming, pain in the ass part of any project. And I mean, keep in mind, we did build this car from stock to basically racetrack in the space of 8 months. So it's still an absolute record-breaking, blistering pace. But things that we didn't get around to doing before we had to whisk this car away to do the Brisbane show, the Melbourne show, the Sydney shows, was things like the roof racks, lighting, locker wiring, awning, sway bars, drive shafts, you name it. This thing needed it done still before we could go off-road. And now that all the shows are done and we finally have a little bit of time, it's a matter of knuckling down and getting those things done so that we can actually go wheeling. So I'm going to show you what we've been up to lately, ticking those things off the list, and then I'm going to run you through exactly what still needs to be done until we can get those Maxxis Trepidors on some dirt to kick things off. Let's jump under the car. One of the first things the team here did was fix our steering damper mount. Now, originally, when we were at Heisman, we were doing the alignment and getting this thing set up with the coilovers. We got them to mount up this Bilstein steering dampener, which we actually got supplied by the team at Cal Off-Road. Now, originally there, we just did a sort of quite a, not weak, it was adequate for road driving bracket, just to at least get it mounted up so that we could take it to the shows and it was in place and that kind of thing. But we quickly realized that if we went off-road, the Treps air down, 37s, a lot of weight getting reefed around, it was just going to bend that bracket and probably snap off in the bush, which was just going to really suck. So the guys did a very staunch bracket up here on the chassis. It's all painted up, looks $1 million bucks, very similar looking to a Panhard bracket. And what's really impressive is that they've still managed to make it all fit up here, because space and real estate in the front of this car is an absolute premium because of the 2-inch diff push that we did, and all the bars, the massive GU diff, the Twiz housing, all that sort of stuff. So in order to have a really staunch bracket and still make everything fit in here, they've done really well. So I'm glad that's in here. It's going to give us full confidence now that when we're rally packing off-road, we're not going to have to worry about this bracket snapping off or anything sad like that. The next couple of things they've done, which are absolutely sick, are up in the engine bay. So let's jump up there. Now, whilst the steering dampener bracket was important, nothing that they've done so far has been more important than these two things in here. The first and most obvious is probably this guy right here. This is the Coilover tower brace. Now, right from the start, we did the one in the back because obviously, well, we didn't need to put an engine in the car. But without knowing exactly where the engine, the turbo, and all that was going to sit, we really and realistically couldn't put this tower brace in until everything was finalized. So we had to bring the car back here once it was all done. And the guys, like everything Kinsela does, have absolutely nailed it. It looks so tidy. We sprayed it in the same chassis black that the entire chassis was sprayed in as well, so it looks perfect, looks phenomenal. And what this is basically going to do is, obviously with the coilover towers and the way these really long shocks are mounted, is that there's so much leverage. Obviously they mount right up here, and the actual from here to where they're mounted to the chassis is like ½ a meter. So there's a lot of leverage at play. If you hit a bump or anything, and the coilover towers that aren't braced can have a tendency to bend inwards, which is obviously not what you want. So before we did any sort of forward driving, heck, even before you hit a pothole that was too big, you really needed to get this in the car. So we couldn't really go wheeling, we couldn't really do any driving until we got this in. Now, you're probably wondering how it's mounted. They've done it a really clever way. Up under here, hidden underneath are 2 Allen head bolts, and there's captive nuts welded on up in here. So it's completely removable, which is important as well, because obviously servicing the car and that kind of thing, you don't want it to be a hassle. You don't want a weld-in brace or anything stupid like that. So the guys have absolutely nailed that. And while we're in the engine bay, we're also going to talk about the other thing that was really important that the guys did. And a lot of you guys actually at all the forward drive shows were commenting on this. And it was something that we basically were just buying our time until we could get it back here to get this done and the other stuff done, which is this right here. We got the guys to do these beautiful rolled inner guards. Obviously, when we built the car, we cut a stack, an absolute load of Toyota stuff out of the way in order for those tires to actually cycle through their range of movement and not actually scrub and that kind of thing. But what that meant was we had no inner guards anymore, which meant if we'd gone off-road without inner guards, it was going to be mud and stones and just sand and shrapnel getting shredded through the engine bay, hitting the bonnet, ripping looms, you know, belting in the intake, the overflow tank, the booster, basically everything. It was going to f*** everything. So we couldn't do that until we had these done. So these are some really nice rolled inner guards, but this is basically going to be a shrapnel blanket for when everything's flicking off those treps. It's not going to come in here and just absolutely munch everything. We've sprayed the top side in the chassis black again to match the engine bay, the coilover towers and that kind of thing, but the underside is done in Raptor coat so that it's got that longevity. It's not going to chip or flake when it is getting the stones absolutely belted into it. And we finished it with this really nice pinch weld too, so we'll be able to mount some rubber matting to the edge of that bubble there. It should be a really nice, tidy, factory looking way to get away with the amount of modification and molestation that we've done in this engine bay. And as you can see up along here, we've bolted it all up and mounted them along here. So they're super strong, super sturdy, and they're perfectly smooth as well. So even if there's a tiny bit of scrubbing, you know, full lock at full bump, the underside of the inner guard is completely smooth. So it's going to do no damage to the guard and no damage to the tire. Now, while we're here, we'll talk about something that's not yet been done, that's something that's very important to get done. And it involves Kinselas very much. It also involves another shop very much. So we're going to jump back to the front and talk about that. A couple of more things that are going to be really problematic before we get this thing off-road. One of them is in my hand, and that's Swaybars. Now, custom Swaybars were the only option with this car. We tossed up the design, I guess the sort of build phase of whether we did torsion DFI style Swaybars or we went some custom one-piece bars by a mob here in Sydney. And we ended up going custom one-piece bars, but unfortunately, what that meant was we had to wait until the car was fully weighted, interior done, engine in, driving at ride height, before we could really work out exactly where these were going to go, how the links were going to run, and that sort of thing. We're finally at that stage now. So this was sort of the first, I guess, prototype bar for the front of this car up to 35mm. Super, super thick. Because yes, whilst it might seem ridiculous to some of you, four-wheel drives should have sway bars in them. If they're set up correctly, they won't limit your flex. This thing's got 1,000 horsepower. It's designed to go fast off-road, but also be able to flex through just about anything. So we want it to be stable and drive nice. We want it to be predictable, and that means having sway bars. So we are working closely with the team and Doug at Seaton Suspension. They've got a fab shop that makes these bars here in Sydney. They've also got a shop up on the Central Coast in Somersby. Now, he's going to be mucking around with the front bar, also mucking around with the rear bar, and getting something in this car that will work and hopefully help keep it rubber side down, because right now with the 3-link in the front and the 4-link in the rear and there being no bushes in the car, there's very little lateral resistance, which means the car, depending on the pitch of the road or the track, will literally just fall that way. I don't want to take this thing off-road, have it being a big floppy dildo and just drag the side of the body up the first track that we come across and total the wrap, dent every panel, ruin the bar work and that sort of thing. I know it's a 4-wheel drive, but it doesn't have to drive like a piece of shit. Just need a little bit more time. Other thing that's worth mentioning while I'm here, one of the biggest things that you guys probably notice at all the shows is there is no front drive shaft in this thing yet.
You don't say!
That's basically just because I've been lazy. I just need to get my hands on a GU front shaft and an 80 series front shaft, because obviously it's a GU front end in this. We've then got to take it to a custom drive shaft shop and get them to make an 80 series transfer end, GU diff end, but make it longer so that it can handle the articulation, but also longer because we push the wheelbase forward 2 inches. That in itself is a mission for most drive shaft shops. So that's going to be a little bit of a headache, but we will get there. The other problem is the rear tail shaft isn't long enough and it's not strong enough. So we've basically got to build a staunch shaft for that. But then the problem is building a staunch, strong shaft that's going to be able to travel as long as it needs to be without breaking the bank. So that's the other thing. So if you're a drive shaft shop out there and you want to jump on board and help us out, hit me up, please, because I am at a bit of an impasse there. Then, once we've got the lockers wired, the awning on the car, the sway bars in, and the drive shaft sorted, we can go off-road. I know it feels like it's been forever. Keep in mind, we only started building this car in February of this year. Still hasn't even been a full 12 months from stock to what it is now. So it is still moving very quickly. I know you guys would love to see this thing off-road. Trust me, nothing screams, nothing gets me more turned on than the idea of 1,000 horsepower 1FZ on gate, limiter bashing, 2-step through the bush on a beach, just absolutely rampaging. But I just want to make sure everything is as perfect as possible before we go and do that. In terms of an estimated date of us going off-road, I reckon before Christmas. I reckon a little weekend away somewhere before Christmas is quite possible. It sort of depends. I know the automotive industry is one of those ones that likes to shut everything down and go on Christmas for about 6 weeks, but we'll see if we can squeeze in a trip before then. Hopefully you guys hang around and stay tuned and get excited, because that is going to be one big moment. I haven't driven full drive off-road in well over 18 months, because obviously the old one got stolen when I had no engine. We've been building this. I'm as excited as you guys are, and if you think anything other than that, you're tripping. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. Hopefully you can actually see that we are making moves in order to get this car off-road, and we're still working with the best in the industry to make that happen as quickly as possible. Before you go, I've got a couple of favors to ask. The first is go and follow the Instagram page that I've got on the screen here, Lost and Living. It's my account. It's a little bit of an experiment. We're just trialing some new things. I can't tell you too much about it, but what I can tell you is it's all going to make sense at the start of next year, and I really want to bring all of you guys along for the ride and the journey. It's going to be absolutely super sick. So trust me when I say, just go and follow it. That's it. The second favor I need from you guys is to hit the red button on this page right now. Subscribe to the channel, share this with your mates, turn the notifications on by pressing that bell, because it all helps. This next sort of 12 months, 2024 season is going to be absolutely sick. It's going to be insane. I'm going to bring you guys all along for the ride. We're trying to level up. I couldn't do it without all of you. So, until next Thursday, see you soon.